Can business save the climate? Hello and a very warm welcome to Global Talk on DW. I'm Sarah Kelly. We are coming to you today from Bonn, Germany. This is the site of the United Nations Global Climate Conference COP23. So let's discuss. It is my great pleasure to welcome here today, we have Your Royal Highness from Burkina Faso, Princess Abzeita Djigma. She is joining us today. She is the ambassador of Burkina Faso for renewable energy and energy efficiency. We also have from Deutsche Post DHL, Professor Dr. Christof Ehrhart, Executive Vice President for Corporate Communications and Responsibility. And from Deutsche Asset Management, Michael Holter joins us today. You are a director at Deutsche, and we thank you very much for being with us. And from the Öko Institute in Germany, Dr. Felix Mattis is with us here on the set. And Dr. Felix Mattis is Research Coordinator for Energy and Climate Policy. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you also to our host, to Deutsche Post DHL Group. Christof, I want to direct the first question to you because we're sitting in your global headquarters right now, the Post Tower in Bonn, Germany, a structure which has won numerous awards for just how green and sustainable it is. Apart from building green structures, can business save the climate, and what is DHL doing?
Well, I think a business can make a significant contribution to it, and has to, because on the one hand side, we have a responsibility to the environment in which we are active, natural environment as well as societal environment. Secondly, we have an opportunity also to differentiate us from competitors with sustainable products and services. And then for sure, we can be a role model for other companies in our industry. And so there are actually basically three reasons why we think it is necessary to be engaged in sustainability as a company. And we have goals in that area since quite a while. We started a project to reduce our CO2 emissions by 30% until the year of 2020 in 2007 already. And we achieved those targets 4 years earlier than expected. And as a result of that, we did a more long-term shot now, and we decided to aim for going emission-free by 2050, which is a long shot, yes. Most of us will not be around in 2050 anymore, and that's why we have defined also in-between targets by the year of 2025.
And I want to talk with you a little bit later about how it is that you plan to get there, because what an ambitious goal that is. But first, I want to go right now from big business to a small product, which is having a very big impact, especially on the continent of Africa. And Your Highness, I will turn to you with that, because you have pioneered this solar lamp, which has actually been named by the United Nations as one of the 14 global breakthrough solutions for achieving sustainability. First of all, congratulations to you on doing that. Second of all, I'd like to know, how big do you see its impact as being?
So first of all, I would like to thank you to having me in the program, and also to thank the government of Germany for hosting the COP23. I'm here also as a special envoy for the President of Burkina Faso on SDGs and climate change. So of course, coming back to your question, why did I start the Mama Light initiative? And why these solar lanterns? Because when you finish your study, that's what I'm an engineer by profession, I went back to the countryside, all the way down what we call the last mile, and it was dark, as you can't imagine. I say, my husband is Dutch, my kids, I have 4 kids, and they have light, they can make their study. Things need to change. That was, I say, I'm a highness from the countryside, I have responsibility, so solutions are there. I need to take my responsibility and start doing my homework. The Mama Light initiative is doing my homework because parents are send me to school. So I came with a solution so that I start to do it. And the impact is really huge. Then you see small business start growing. It's reduced indoor pollution. Myself, my lungs are weak. Why? Because I studied myself when I was small with kerosene lantern. I know the impact. And I know also the value when you have a light, a proper light. That also, for me, bringing that solution was to don't bring a disease to my people. And the quality of the LED that I'm using, because you have a lot of lanterns in the market, but the quality of the LEDs are not good, then it's creating also eyes problems. So that is the...
It's so amazing to see how something so simple with just a little injection of passion there can really make a very big difference. Michael, I want to turn to you because you have the big money perspective here. You're designing funds which use sustainable assets. People can invest in them at Deutsche Asset Management. How do you see sustainability and profitability going together?
Well, I think profitability is a function of sustainable business practice. There is no difference between the one or the other. It's not a contradiction. I think the challenge we have is to find enough good businesses, like such kind of initiatives, which capital can support. We have an affluence of capital. There is no question about it. We have invested already capital that has financed the acquisition of around 200,000 of installations like Her Highness has presented in Eastern Africa. Yeah. We are migrating to Western Africa now.
Great.
So we have solutions, we have capital, we have the technology. We need entrepreneurs, and we need to find this kind of spirit to drive the solution into the market.
Is that because there aren't enough businesses today that are making money being sustainable?
I would argue any business that has long-term success works sustainably. It is also something, a study of studies that has been performed by the Hamburg University in cooperation with Deutsche Asset Management has revealed. Yeah. So out of an analysis of 2,200 studies that have tried to find a correlation between positive return, long-term positive return, and sustainable business practice, determined that the majority of businesses produce long-term positive returns exceeding the market level if they have sustainability practice being part of their DNA or being part of their business attitude.
Felix, now I want to put it all into the big picture with you, because I know that you really have this big picture view of how it is that business is impacting the climate. How do you see the relationship between the two right now?
No, first of all, business is part of the problem, and business needs to be part of the solution. And I think the key issue is there's plenty of opportunity for growth if the regulatory, the market framework is right. But on the other hand, we also need to deal with the business which needs to phase out. So if it is about coal, etc., that is not about growth and business opportunities, it's about a managed decline. And that brings me to the point that in the end of the day, the question is, what drives business? And business is driven by the regulatory framework, by the market framework. It is about carbon pricing, but it is also the icebreaker which delivers the new options. But again, this is about the growth story, and there's an important growth story if the framework is right. But there's also another story. We need to work with business and the employees and others, because especially in the industrialized countries, it is also about phase out non-sustainable high carbon industries.
Phase out non-sustainable high carbon industries. I mean, would you consider your business to be in one of those industries, Christof? I mean, because when we think about logistics, for example, I mean, you have to move things from one place to another. You actually have, I believe, one of the world's largest air freight centers here in Germany as well, which moves some of those products. What's your priority in offsetting that impact? Where do you start?
I mean, we have two principles here, which are burning less and burning clean. And we try to apply them to all kinds of infrastructures we have, such as buildings, our fleet, aviation for sure, and all kinds of infrastructure elements of what we do. We have started that, as I said, pretty early, and we came a long way in the beginning by harvesting the low-hanging fruits in that area. By, again, for example, changing the lighting systems of our buildings or optimizing the way we use our cars. But then you come to a point where you have to think really big, and I like the notion of the icebreaker. In our case, the iconic example would be the delivery solution on the last mile, as we say it. So the car by which the delivery person comes to the household and delivers the parcel or the letter. Now here the problem is that the technological device of choice usually is a carbon-driven car. In order to find an alternative, we had to go that extreme that we had to build our own car. That was the only alternative to find a way to optimize that last mile element. And in the meantime, we have 3,500 own-produced cars on the streets. We call them street scooter.
What does that say about the role of German business in helping the climate? The fact that you had to go it alone, the fact that in a country where the automotive industry is the largest industry in the country, you had to develop your own electric vehicle.
Well, what I can say on the positive side is it shows that it is possible with the technology of today to build your own car. You need know-how, and we gained that by acquiring a startup close to the RWTH Aachen, the industry university here in Germany, not the only one, but one of the big ones. They had the know-how, we had the vision for a delivery car, we used our own delivery people to optimize the concept and build it, and now we have it. I think on the positive side, you can say it's possible to build it if you really want it. It was difficult to get it on the market.
Fascinating that you were able to do so. And I want to continue this theme of partnership, in fact, and I want to turn to Your Highness, because this is something that, that you have also talked about as well. What do you think that big business can learn, for example, from your efforts in the energy market on the grassroots level, especially when it comes to partnership?
For me, it's about, sometimes we think a lot top-down. For me, it's about bottom-up approach, which I call the greening up. Because we Africans, or even the small islands as well, we're green by nature. And even in our culture, we are not creating our family, we're building, we continue the family. So I think business is about continuity. And when we talk about sustainability, and I totally agree with what you're saying, don't wait for the solution, because you are the solution. But you need to be conscious about it. And you need visionaries and people who see that in the river here, you have the crocodiles, but you need one who say, okay, I will run as fast as I can and jump and cross it. That's what he's able to do. You need those kind of people to pave the way, to show the vision, even if we're not you're the one who's going to implement it, but you need a state to start, because the technology of tomorrow, and for instance in Africa, we are not going to use the technology of the past. And also I'm bringing the attention of our universities. Don't train our kids on the jobs of yesterday, please. That is also one of the, because this is part of our homework as Africans. We need, if we need to jump, to make the jump, and to grow together. And also this brings me to the ongoing business models also in OECD countries regarding how to buy the solar PWs and put on the roofs. You have the leasing. Where are we going to, when the lease contract will end, where those PWs will end? Because myself, I want to be part of that. I'm thinking on the technology. So we need, that's what I say, we really need to think together the technology, how we are going to recycle then, and think on recycling.
And that leads perfectly to our next point here, because I mean, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we are in Bonn today, the site of where the COP23 is currently taking place. If we need to work together, Felix, what do you think that we need to see come out of this meeting? Because I mean, in past COPs, for example, we saw the Paris Accord, for example, agreed to a moment of jubilation. But now it's really about getting into the dirty details, for example. What do we need to see?
Yeah, I think we need to have an outcome on what are the transparent and reliable and robust implementation provisions for Paris. Because Paris has set the big framework, the big targets, and now it's coming to the nitty-gritty details, how to make things comparable, how to build a common framework, and that is hard work. I think we went through this with the Kyoto Protocol, with the Marrakesh Accords, and the Marrakesh Accords have been much, much thicker paper than the Kyoto Protocol, and we will see the same here. And so it's about building trust and building common visions. And my favorite Chinese sayings is crossing the river by feeling the stones, because that says two things. You need to know where the other riverbank is, and you need to have a clear plan that you want to cross the river, but on the other hand, you need to deal with the solutions which are available and the solutions which are imaginable. And I think this is the key issue also for the outcome of the COP. Solve the issues in the nitty-gritty details of reporting, transparency, trust, etc., without losing track on the big target. And I think that brings me back to Christof. We all don't know how the world will look like in 2050. But we can use the 2050 vision, and the Paris Agreement is a 2050 vision, to ensure consistency with the things which can be done and which needs to be done here and today and also maybe tomorrow. And I think this is the key importance, that we all come from very, very different directions. But what happens in Bonn here is to make different things from different national circumstances, from different cultures, from different political systems, comparable, yes, to join forces for this vision of carbon neutral world.
Michael, as an asset manager and also Deutsche Bank being a partner, for example, at COP and a sponsor, what would you like to see?
Well, I think personally I would like to see a kind of a depoliticization of the topic because, as you already indicated, now it's the time of the practitioners. And we need solutions and human beings that can deliver the solutions. We don't need further targets or discussions whether the target can be achieved with certain interventions. What we need is a plain level globally, on the one side with respect to regulation. So what regulation do I need to obey? What are the rules I'm being bound to? And on the other side, we need to have practitioners that have the ability also to fail. Is what I was thinking about what you discussed before. This is a little bit the missing piece, allowance and acceptance of failure. We need trial and error, trial and error. This is how we have developed over the last hundreds of years, and this will never change. No one wants to talk about failure, but we need to have a certain acceptance on failure. And I can give you another example where I think the attention of politics and the attention of public sector towards an issue was already solved before it was even realized, and that's the telecommunications sector in Africa. It was leapfrogged. We were thinking about cables and networks. They just built their mobile stations. Deal done. Digitalized, fully. Things like this can happen, and they don't even need to happen with public intervention. Sometimes public intervention is helpful, but there is a point in time when the public needs to revoke and go back.
But what happens here is, I think it's deeply political, because climate is a matter of time. We don't have much time for this. And the second is that we have different levels or different degrees of responsibilities. And I think we are talking about level playing field today, but a level playing field which also reflects different responsibilities in this world is a highly political issue, and therefore I would say even this implementation stuff, which is negotiated here, is extremely political, because it's not only about today, it is also about the past and obviously on the future.
Yes.
If I may, I would actually echo both of the positions. I think COP23 very nicely shows that nobody can go alone in the issue. It's a complex topic. It has not been created by one single player. I would again agree to what Felix said. Industry played a major role into it, so we also have to be a part of the solution. But there are also other partners in the game, and I think the whole COP movement in recent years has shown if NGOs, governments, business come together and look jointly for solutions, then a difference can be made. And what I find fascinating is, and you all know not all of the global, let's say, industrial states are so strongly behind the targets of the COP process. Who would have thought 5 years ago that in the case that a major state puts question marks behind it, the whole movement would still just go on? And you would have the impression everyone is so dedicated to achieve something. I think this is the result of now players really joining forces, coming together, and also filling voids that might come into existence. So my feeling is we need all of those dimensions. We need the entrepreneurial spirit and dynamism on the ground in the countries, and also the watchdog sometimes from the NGO side. We need the governments and the regulators to put a frame up, and we need business to keep on doing what business do, which is earning money by solutions and services that create a market and find a customer.
And Your Highness, I want to turn to you now, because you were actually at the signing of the Paris Accords. Those Paris Accords, which you just mentioned, of course, the United States has put a question mark over whether they actually have committed to withdrawing from it. You were also at the COP22 in Marrakesh. You were part of the delegation there. Yeah. For you specifically then, I mean, how high are your hopes that the targets will indeed be implemented and reached going forward?
For me, when I go somewhere, I don't expect anything. I go to share what I'm doing, to showcase, and see what we can do together. And I think if the issue of the negotiators is that we want this, but where you want rights, you have duties before, right? And that's why our country, in Burkina Faso, we were the first at COP21 as an African country ready with its NDCs. And again here, we're the first one ready with a national appropriated plan. But I'm extremely happy, and we will work together. We have our NDC is budgeted at $7 billion, so everything is managed. We have people who are committed, and you have trusted people, because trust needs to be there. That's what we have. Insurance. When you don't have trust, you need insurance to cover to be your trusted person. And I think it's a time to act. For me, the COP of Bonn, of COP23, should be focusing on what needs to be done. You have DHL here. I can learn from his experiences regarding connectivity, logistics, and that's what's interesting me. I have the Deutsche Bank here. Finance, if said me, you need a sovereign guarantees. Okay, well, I will call my president and say that's what you need. The terms of reference are there. The diagnostic is done. It's a matter of doing, and that's where business really can make the change and do it in the ethic. Because the importance also, when you do something, you need also to bring in the ethics.
And I want to get to that concrete action, in fact. Now, I want to leave with something positive and some concrete action before we go. In just 2 sentences or less, perhaps I can ask all of you. What do you think needs to be done if you could only choose one thing within the next 10 years for business in particular to save the climate? And I will begin with you, Felix.
The first is to set a significant price on carbon, because that's a major driver for both the new options and for phasing out the old options, because I think this has been the difference in Paris. The solutions are there, the options are there, they are not longer costly. We need structural change, but it can be done.
Michael?
Recognize the limitations that are given to us by the society by setting the target of 1.5 to 2% degree.
Your Highness?
Just, I have to say one thing. This is difficult. Adapt the financial tools. to my women who has the AAA, because we really need to, because they are paying up to 100% of the rate when they borrow money, and so they're paying back. We should also pay attention on that and recognize that will make his life easier, and we will grow. If I grow, the part of the cake will be bigger for all.
Such an important goal. Christof?
Well, we have to provide sustainable services that customers are willing to pay for, which sounds a bit easier than being done. Specifically in the B2B world, we still face a situation that customers want it, they long for it, they ask for it, but if you discuss about how the price for this has to be set, then sometimes it's still a bit difficult, but we're getting there.
Can business save the climate? You have been joining us here on Global Talk. We'd like to thank all of our guests for your insight this past hour, and we want to thank all of you for joining us. I'm Sarah Kelly in Bonn. You have been watching Global Talk on DW. We'll see you next time.